This video was brought to you by Slightly, a platform for startups and small businesses to create professional investor decks and sales presentations. Get 1 free month by signing up at slightly.com/YouTube. If there was one big and powerful tech company that could dethrone Facebook from its social media kingdom, who would that be? Think about it, there aren't a lot of options. That's right, and if there's an internet giant with the money and hierarchy to take on Facebook, it's probably Google, or at least it's definitely one of them. One might argue if Google needed to do that though. But when you look at Facebook, not as much as social media, but as the advertising monster that it is, then it made more sense for Google to worry about it. And they did worry about it, and it created one of the biggest failures in the history of social media apps. Looking back at the 2010 Google, it had already been solidly dominating online searches and was quickly becoming a significant player in the mobile space with the launch of Android. They had mapped much of the world's geography, indexed millions of books, and were getting to stuff like smart wearables and building self-driving cars. It didn't look like a company that needed to place such a high bet on social media, but still, they did. So in this video, we're gonna remember Google+, Google's most ambitious take on social media and its somewhat inevitable downfall to death. We'll first revisit some of Google's previous attempts on social networks, then go over why and how Plus was born, review some of the product features and development, do the necessary confrontation with Facebook, and finally, get to some conclusions on the outcome. This is Startup Forensics Google+. As some of you may know, Google+ was not the first or the second attempt from Google to create its own social media platform, trying to replicate what Facebook had done so well since its inception. And that right there may be an important starting point, the why. We know Google wasn't born as a social network, even though it drives traffic on the web with its more than 2 billion active users. By 2010, Facebook was privately valued at $14 billion, while Google's market cap was already at around $200 billion. But social wasn't in Google's DNA. Even people like Chris Wetherell, the founder of Google Reader, recognized this by acknowledging that it wasn't going to be why Google existed, unlike the way it was for Twitter or Facebook. And he went as far as to state that it was the wrong company at the wrong time. Still, since the early days, they tried hard to out Facebook, creating things like Orkut, a social site that launched just shortly after Facebook, but that was rapidly overtaking. Now, let's remember this is 2004. Google wasn't a design firm or anything, but we just want to take a couple of seconds to share this Orkut promotional video from Google's official account on YouTube. Okay, moving on. After Orkut, Google also launched Wave, a real-time communication platform that apparently did a lot more than messaging. Mashable described it in a 2010 article saying, combine aspects of email instead of messaging, wikis, web chat, social networking, and project management to build one elegant in-browser communication client. It sounded convoluted, and looking at images of its interface, it did look a little confusing, so it ultimately never took off. But the most significant attempt on making a social platform before Google+ was Google Buzz. And this one had a particularity. It was built on the back of Gmail, and it was very much entwined to it. That probably seemed like an obvious move to hit the ground running and leverage those millions of Gmail users. But the truth is that it was poorly implemented and ended up backfiring. Big time. It was not too late before a lot of Gmail users were surprised by now being part of this thing called Buzz, and by finding out their email contact list and other stuff had been made public. For example, publishing your most email contacts as friends, along with other features that made other information public without user express consent. As you can imagine, or remember, this developed and ended in a scandalous class action lawsuit that Google settled with the Federal Trade Commission at the end of 2010. And had to pay $8.5 million. All US Gmail users at that time received an unusual email from Google clarifying the issue and sort of apologizing, but also stating that no user would earn a dime. It wasn't much of a goodwill gesture, but part of the agreement settled with the FTC. So after this bumpy road, Google persisted and in June 2011, launched yet the most powerful, ambitious, and well-thought social platform that it had been cooking. Google+. It was released only a few months after Buzz was turned off, but this doesn't mean that it was built lightly. All the opposite. Numerous testimonials and interviews from former executives revealed that Plus had become a central project at Google, swallowing resources and staff from all other units. It's been reported that Larry Page himself, the co-founder, that had been in the shadows for a time and returned as CEO around those days, sent an internal memo across the company and tied 25% of employee bonuses to their company's success in the social space, meaning Google+. The memo said things like, if we're successful, your bonus could be up to 25% bigger. If not, your bonus could be up to 25% less than the target. Now, for comparison, it's been reported that the Buzz team had not much more than a dozen people, while the Google+ workforce allegedly surpassed the 1,000. Many former executives have confirmed this implied message across the company that the bet was all in. But somehow, Google didn't want to make a big buzz about it. No pun intended. They had already done launch announcements and press stunts for their previous attempts, like Wave or Buzz. And we all know how those went. Not that those went wrong because of making public launch events, of course, but it seemed like Google understood that there was little room for surprise in the social media field, as the public was more than familiar with the looks and mechanics of it, more specifically with Facebook. Instead, with Plus, they were going for the long-term battle and somehow a more under-the-hood approach, looking for a durable and steady insertion of their product in the public's life over the coming years. Apparently, the fear of Facebook was also very real in Google those days, and it moved high management into action. VP of Engineering Vic Gundotra, who had a major role in Android's development, was put in charge of Google's social efforts, and along with Larry Page, they could be seen as the brains behind Google+. In their vision, they wanted to fix online sharing, making it social and more natural, just as much as person-to-person interactions as possible. So, let's do a quick review of Google+'s main features and understand how it really worked. The user experience probably started with Circles. It was the group management feature where you could easily group your Gmail or Google account contacts like families, groups of friends, based on interests and drag them into Circles. Familiar and straightforward enough. You would basically create groups with the people in your Google contacts, somewhat based on your interactions with them. In a TechCrunch interview, Gundotra acknowledged Circles as a core feature of the product, despite also being aware that group management features in social media weren't particularly a hit by that time. It turns out the Circles feature may have been one of the keys to Google+ failure, as suggested by MG Siegler in his TechCrunch review as an early adopter. It appeared that in Google's executives' minds, sharing through Circles was the correct way to use Google+, and this was meant to differentiate it from Facebook or Twitter. With Circles, interactions were supposed to be more personal in the sense that you would share with your own circles and not as much publicly. But this wasn't really achieved, and the very few people who posted did so publicly, making it look just like a feed on any other social network. Another feature was Sparks, a sort of interactive search engine within Google+, where you could search for content of your interest and be able to share it with your circles. This allowed some interactions like commenting and the +1 reactions, pretty much the equivalent to Facebook likes. It also had content suggestions in the featured interest area, and through instant upload, you were able to upload photos and videos from your phone. Another feature was Huddle, a group messaging app that worked across Android, iOS, and SMS to communicate with people in your circles. And finally, there was Hangouts, one that evolved and made it into the current suite of Google apps, now renamed to Google Meet. But back then, it was a group video chat integrated with your circles, so if you were online and willing to video chat, everybody in the circle would be notified and able to join the conference. Gundotra had suggested that video chat wasn't yet so popular, mostly because it was socially awkward to do it, and they also wanted to fix that. But all these features felt like standalone products, and that place where Google intended to unify them and provide users with a single destination ended up being a ghost town. It was all supposed to be centralized in the infamous black bar that was embedded on top of Google sites, the place where you could always have access to and where you controlled all the functions. Some of these features evolved to become their own standalone apps within the current lineup of Google apps, like Photos or Hangouts. In the end, Plus was a huge effort to unify all these features into a place where you would create a single identity, traceable across the web, and socialize on the internet. It sounds ambitious enough for a company like Google, and in a way is what they ended up doing. But their attempts to make it through social media were all doomed. I wish I had used Google Plus more so I could have a clear memory of the experience of using all those features, but the reality is that I hardly used it a handful of times, and chances are you didn't use it as much either. This became painfully evident as time went by. In early 2015, one study published by Eric Enge and Stone Temple Consulting revealed some of the concerning engagement metrics of Google Plus. Google hadn't published any data, and this was the biggest analysis of actual profiles data to that moment. It reported that the number of active users in Google Plus was way lower than 1% of Google users. Agreed, considering Google has over 2 billion users, this is still more than 100 million users. But the study also showed that more than 90% of people with a profile, which was created for every Google signup, had never publicly posted anything. Nothing. Furthermore, for those around 111 million active users on Google+, only 6.7 million users had 50 or more posts in their history, and only 3.5 million of them had 50 or more posts in the last 30 days, according to the study. These are numbers that an early stage startup would dream of, but for Google and their bet to outrun Facebook, this screamed failure. After witnessing the epic amounts of work and resources that were put into Google+, even some former Google employees from other divisions said they were unamused when they saw the result. It was just too much like Facebook with a Twitter sprinkle. Soon, it became evident that the goal of taking over Facebook, or at least pairing with it, just wasn't going to happen. On the other hand, Facebook had been thriving and catching up with more than 1.4 billion users by then, and a market cap already at half of Google's. More importantly, Facebook profiles and feeds were vibrant, full of family, friends, interactions, just happening naturally. Birthday dates and pictures, and ultimately, true network effects. Instead, Google Plus just never took off, despite the vast background that Google's user base was supposed to be. And only 6 months after the release, there was already a worrying sense that something wasn't working. By the end of 2018, Google announced the rollout plan to turn off Google Plus due to low usage and challenges involved in maintaining a successful product that meets customers' expectations. As read in their official statement, the plan was to shut it down by August 2019, but the plot thickened when yet new privacy leakage scandals unveiled. Shortly before announcing the shutdown, it was known that earlier in 2018, Google had patched a security hole that gave third-party developers access to user profile data without their consent. This allegedly affected data of 500,000 Google Plus users. However, Google said it had no evidence this data was misused by the 438 apps that could have had access to it. This scandal produced further discomfort when Google admitted to having detected this, but not notifying the public at the time. Things got even worse when a bigger privacy leak was made public, this time by Google themselves, and without waiting months to do it. The new bug was only live for about 6 days in early November 2018, and it was related to the Google Plus People API. It affected more than 50 million users by allowing apps that requested permission to view profile information from users, like names, email addresses, occupation, gender, birthday, relationship status, age. It allowed them to access this information even when the data was set to non-public. Furthermore, it also gave access to profile data that had been shared between users, but that wasn't shared publicly. Yet again, Google said there was no evidence that developers ever realized they had access to this data, or that it was misused in any way. The bug was introduced, detected, and fixed within a week. After this, the Google Plus shutdown date was moved from August to April 2019, and that was it. So yeah, Google's development in social media was everything but glamorous or successful, but not everything was bad. On the bright side of things, Google Plus ended up providing the blueprint for what a Google account is nowadays. Today, it focuses more on productivity, provides an infrastructure for 2 billion users to manage several critical aspects of our lives through its set of apps. And ultimately, in terms of social networks, we must say that Google has the absolute winning hand in the video department with, of course, the unbeatable YouTube, which is a mature and self-sufficient network that will never be in slide bean forensics.